Hey, thanks for watching the Drawing for Adults class today. This class is offered as a partnership between the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center. My name is Peyton, and I have really enjoyed teaching you these programs virtually, and I hope that you have been as well. Today we're going to be talking about quilts. The Smithsonian Magazine recently published a wonderful article. I would encourage you to search it. It's called The Surprisingly Radical History of Quilting, and in the article, you can see these pieces that I have included from the article itself. And in the article, it talks a lot about this recent show that was called Radical Tradition: American Quilts and Social Change. In this show, there are about 30 works of art that range from more traditional styles to contemporary textile art, along with some mixed media and virtual takes on the quilt form. So you can see the AIDS Memorial Quilt, which is right here. Now this is obviously a large scale quilt here, and I think, typically we think of quilts as these blankets that are filled with lots of different patterns, very geometric, maybe symmetrical. And so these artists that we're looking at here are obviously not exactly doing that, right? So they're kind of taking this textile art form. This is Faith Ringgold here, and so she's taking the very traditional kind of style and creating these story quilts. So you can see some influence of a more traditional style, but also with still a contemporary take. And so here's some other artists that I just wanted to highlight. You can kind of look into some of these artists later in more in detail and more in depth, but I just wanted to share some different works that are going on that are more contemporary works that still have that traditional influence, and others that maybe don't really have as much of a traditional influence. So I hope that you'll look into that Smithsonian article about the recent show that was in Toledo. I don't think I mentioned that. And also just consider looking more into some contemporary ideas for quilts. And then for now, we're going to jump into this art project. I am kind of taking this as a fun way to relax. It's very detailed. This is something that you can be doing while listening to an audiobook. But what you're going to want to do to start with a pencil and a piece of paper, just divide up your paper into some sections. Now, of course, you can absolutely, again, look up some different artists that have been making quilts in the past, 100 years or so, and get some different ideas that are a little bit more contemporary. But if you wanted to go for a more traditional route, that's what I'm going to be showing you here. Now, please note that this is not going to be exactly perfect. I am trying to do this somewhat quickly, I guess. Obviously this is a time-lapse video as well, so you're definitely seeing this on a much faster scale anyway. But what I've done is I framed out the edges so that I can do something kind of in that frame and that border, and then I am drawing a grid and then adding little squares into each of those little sections in that grid, and then I'm just going to erase those pencil lines there. Okay, so then I can decide what kind of patterns I want to do. If I want to put little squares in between each of those places, kind of where those lines would have intersected, or I could do something where I'm actually just using the corners of those squares that I've created and doing something that kind of creates the almost a look that those are squares that are continued between each of the squares that I actually drew. So in that kind of negative space, that empty space, it almost connects those lines as if I'm drawing kind of a diamond looking shape there. So now what I'm doing is using this base of an X and a T, and then from there I am simply filling it in with some kind of shape and then some kind of pattern. Obviously, if you were doing this with actual fabrics, you would still be cutting out those shapes, but of course the patterns themselves would likely be the things that are that have the patterns already. Maybe you could add embroidery or different things like that, but you would be using that really for most of your pattern work, whereas here you'd be able to draw it. So just start with whatever kind of template to start. So here you can see I kind of use that X pattern, but I put a square in the middle, and then I'm just adding different lines, different shapes around each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and time-lapse this, expedite the process a little bit faster even for this next little bit, and then you can see once I start coloring. So here I've added in that third row real quick, and then I am going to start on the second and the fourth rows. Okay, so now I'm just gonna work on my border so you can see how I'm going for just some simple designs here. I'm keeping in mind that I have to color this with something, so I don't wanna go too much more detail, though I'm looking at this already thinking this is a ton of detail. So I'm just gonna create some fun little leafy kind of designs here. And then I'm just adding something that's more geometric on the top and bottom. So once you finish drawing all of this out, then you can start thinking about your color scheme. I hope that you will consider looking for just a smaller color palette. Try to restrict your color palette so that you're not using every single color that you have. Maybe start with 3 or 4 colors and then go from there. Alright, so you can watch here as I finish up my final details. I know this is on super speed, but I hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that you'll make some really beautiful quilts after this.